When we are talking about the causes of deadness, we can put it in.
Just a privilege. It is not your right to hear. It is a privilege.
We are together in silent word. When we are using sign language to talk, it means you are in a silent word.
They are these compassionate people. If you are so close to them,
Sign language. It is the best way to communicate with them.
Daddy, come and take me. I didn't have my parents to come because they were there. So that alone made me appreciate the usefulness of hearing.
We have a lot of interpreters from
Their
them.
situation. When you see a deaf person becoming aggressive, you think this deaf is just coming after and say, what is the cause of this?
When we are talking about the causes of deadness, we can put it into three: prenatal, perinatal, and postnatal. When we are talking about the prenatal, it is the early stage of pregnancy when the expectant mother conceives, and by then a lot of things are likely to happen. You see, there are some drugs, they call it any drug that contains what we call mycin. Expectant mother should do away from them because they are very dangerous. And at that period, it is a formation period where the eggs and all those are coming together to form the child. But if care is not taken, if the expectant mother is taking these drugs, as a result of this, it will affect the central nervous system of the baby. And three things can happen. That such a baby will be hearing impaired, could be mentally retarded, or it can be blind. But if it happens that the baby escaped this period, the next one is perinatal. At the perinatal stage, it is when the child is being given birth to. If the mother is not matured enough to give birth to, there is particular oxygen being supplied by the mother to the baby. During the time of breathing and all the stress that is involved in giving birth to, this oxygen can cut in, and as a result of that, it can lead to disability.
How I became deaf, I was sick, I slept, woke up in the morning, and I couldn't hear again. I became deaf while I was sick, and my parents took me to the hospital. So within 2 months, I was healed. Then, after that, I became deaf. I still remember on August 3, 1998. It was in the evening. I had just returned from church. Apparently, we had a lot of programs in the church. I think I was stressed. So when I got home, my mommy was in the kitchen. She was cooking. Usually, anytime she's cooking, I would always sit down with her, but this time, I sat with her on the table. She called me and I couldn't hear her. So she sprinkled some hot water on me. She was making amala. She asked, "What is it? I had been calling you." I couldn't make out what she was saying. The sound merely faded. After about 2 or 3 days, everything's sound was completely gone. I was later taken to the hospital, then to the pastor, imam, and a traditional healer. None could find a solution. They all could find nothing. It wasn't easy at first, but 10 years down the line, I accepted that this is who I am. And this is one of the reasons why part of my work is to make sure that I help those people who are going through the same, because I have been there.
Many parents, when they see their ones become deaf, instead of them to take them for what they are, that this is the problem that has happened, what do we need to remediate this problem? You will see them moving from one place to another, going from one pastor to meet Afa, to meet Abalis and all those stuff. And as a result of that, they will have wasted the glorious time of these deaf people.
They felt that I was pretending, but as time goes on, they accept that this is who I am. They were depressed at my deafness, but later they understand that my deafness does not mean I cannot make it in life. So they put in efforts to ensure that I become great in life. They did not learn sign language, but because they know how to communicate with me. And I lip read. I can talk. The only problem is I can't hear. But they all understand me very well as my friends. Like every other family, it is not easy. I was the first child. It is not easy for them, especially for someone who has depended on hearing, listening to music. Family and friends would come to the house and I would hide myself somewhere. Sometimes they would hide me because it is an embarrassment. However, as time goes on, with more information and more education, that subsided. And I have a godmother whose daughter is also deaf, so my mommy had to reconnect with her. She would ask her questions upon questions. So my godmother's assistance really helped my mom to cope little by little. My dad wasn't always around. He usually traveled, for work, but whenever he returned, he would be sad as a result of my deafness. But today, I am happy because everybody in my family is proud of who I am and what I have achieved. And even if I came back to the world as a deaf, they will always and still be proud of me. Personally, I faced many challenges in life.
When we are using sign language to talk, it means you are in a silent word. The word in which you will not hear the language you are talking about, but you will use your eyes to communicate through the aid of sign language.
To lip read in a group is very hard, especially when everyone is talking at the same time. I don't get to understand all of them, but the few that I'm able to, or I ask the person closest to me what they are all talking about. So it's not like every time I lip read 100%. If I can lip read 100%, then I am no longer deaf. It depends on the people. If it's the people I grew up with, then it will be easy for me to communicate with them. But when there are people who don't even know if I'm deaf or not, then it will take time for me to study them. But so far, my relationship with people is cordial.
It's what we call psychology of deafness. Because of their situation, when you see a deaf person becoming aggressive, you think this deaf is just becoming angry. We should learn to sit down and say, what is the cause of this? It's by maybe loneliness. It's by maybe because of loneliness, they're not talking to the person, and the person is just lonely and he or she becomes aggressive. The government are not really doing enough. If government can make awareness, okay, if there's that law that in the hospital or in the bank there should be an interpreter. In any government parastatal there should be an interpreter. If that can happen, I think it would help to reduce the challenge of a deaf person.
I have stopped visiting the hospital for nearly 20 years now because anytime I go there, to communicate with the doctor is not easy. Usually, a doctor's handwriting is illegible. So if I write my complaint and I pass to them, they reply in their illegible handwriting and I get lost. In these hospitals, there are no sign language interpreters. You see my plight? So I had to resort to treating myself traditionally. Police, army, and so on in Nigeria. Like recently, I was beaten black and blue because I was deaf. They were arresting everybody. And when it came my turn, I just sat down there, looking. Because I couldn't hear them. But they kept on talking and pointing their touches in my eyes, and at some point, I couldn't bear it. I finally said to them, "Wait, please, I am a deaf, but I can talk." That was a very big mistake for me. The policemen and soldiers thought I was trying to pretend or trying to evade arrest. So they beat me seriously. This didn't happen to only me, it has happened to other deaf in the past, but they kept quiet. The problem is, if all of us keep quiet, people will not know what is happening to us. Government needs to make the police, respect all citizens, irrespective of their disabilities, whether they are blind, crippled, or deaf. They should learn to handle all kinds of people because it is very normal to be different. All of us in one country cannot be the same. It is diversity that makes life beautiful. When you are working with people who are deaf, people on the wheelchair, people who are standing, people who can walk, people who can't talk. Imagine if all of us look alike. It doesn't make any sense. So in this country, we have a lot of work to do. When I travel to Sweden, I travel to Sweden where they speak Swedish Sign Language. I use the word speak because they speak with their mouth. If it is to speak with their hands, which is sign language, I might understand. Now, if they speak Swedish, I speak English in sign language. When we arrived there, communication was the problem. But luckily for me, I had an interpreter. When someone signs in Swedish, a Swedish interpreter will translate in English so that my own interpreter will sign it for me in English. I traveled to Sweden for an internship. Imagine if I had traveled without an interpreter. The whole journey would have been a waste. You need to understand that culture in different areas is different. If you want to make yourself important, you have to prepare well. That was why I mentioned that getting a sign language interpreter is very important. In other countries, the government provides interpreters for any program or events for free. If one has an event tomorrow, you will book your interpreter today. Your interpreter will be there waiting for you at the event free of charge. I have to search and search for any available interpreter and end up paying the person from my stipend. Also, we use deaf pidgin, most of us. Let me give you an example. I am going to the market. That is English. But most deaf people will say, I go market. Now, let us assume that they write the same sentence, which is deaf pidgin, in their final exams or any other exams. You see that they will fail. This is why most deaf people have problems with English language. Now, this brings to mind that the Ministry of Education needs to create a formula or a different marking scheme that will work separately for the deaf. If you see some deaf dropping out of school, usually it is because they are not able to speak English correctly. Most of these people are good at mathematics or other subjects, but English is always a problem.
Dealing with deaf people, they are very good people. They are very, very intelligent. Only what these deaf people need is an interpreter that will sit down in the front, interpreting what the lecturer is saying. So we will want to convey the message to them. Once they get this, I bet you, they have all what it takes. But part of the problem they have is this. Many people, they used to look down on them.
The problem is there is no cooperation in Nigeria. Even the federal government doesn't cooperate to help persons with disability in Nigeria. They just see them as deaf, and people can never do what normal people can do. In deaf schools nowadays, many deaf educators are there, but the federal government did not focus on them to be able to bring deaf teachers appointments to improve the deaf child. In some areas, the teachers who can hear and talk will just write on the board for the deaf. Then they will return to their offices without interpreting the meaning to the deaf child. Some of them even have masters, but our government refuses to employ them. How then can deaf education improve? If the federal government can consider this, then the problem is halfway solved.
Last year I was in Sweden. I went there for training on the sign language for these deaf people. When I got there, I met their own deaf people. Come and see what these people are doing. Their own government have pre-planned everything for them. Okay, you are deaf, you have gone to school, you have this certificate. The next thing is placement. Place them where they will be useful. But here in Nigeria, they will tell you that even the hearing people have not got the job. You, that you see yourself as a deaf, you are now coming here and seeking for the job, and they don't believe anything in them. That is it. They lack the recognition. People don't recognize them.
To be honest with you, it is 3%. They are intelligent deaf who graduated from here with second-class upper. There was one with second-class upper from civil engineering who no company would offer a job. He was very brilliant, but he couldn't get a job because he was deaf. Apart from him, we have many others that graduated with good results. But Nigeria didn't accept them. Most of them are teachers. Government should please take us serious. We are humans too, and we should be treated like one. Never to look down on us. They should include us in activities. For example, the Disability Act has not been signed into law for a long time, and this is disrupting everything. They are kneeling on our rights. Therefore, I would like to tell the federal government to do something that will be of benefit to us deaf people. It is funny because people who are not deaf in Nigeria have difficulties in getting a well-paid job, let alone deaf people. Now the problem is, most of the deaf graduates we have are struggling. Apart from the fact that the foundations on which they finish their education is not very strong. Now we cannot compare the English language of a hearing person to that of the deaf. Few of them who have work got it from federal government. They mostly become teachers. People that study different courses have to become teachers or start their own businesses, or they risk becoming jobless. The problem is that our society in Nigeria today is disabled. If a society opens her mind and reasons well, she will know how to make herself eligible to everybody, no matter the kind of disability you have. But when the government does not pay attention to areas like this, the percentage of a deaf person getting a job in Nigeria is almost null, except if the person has a long leg.
I have seen a deaf person that is a doctor, a medical doctor. I have seen a deaf person that is a lawyer. I have seen a deaf person that is a doctor, like in education, PhD. I have seen a deaf person that is an artist. Okay, I have even heard of a deaf person that is a professor, not here in Nigeria, but he's a Nigerian. So he went to US. So there are so many things. One thing about the deaf people is that they are this compassionate people. If you are so close to them, they love you. They just love you, and So there are a lot of things, and then they learn fast. Once you are able to teach them and you're able to understand them, they learn fast.
In this university, we have produced many of them. We have the one of a medical doctor in person of Dr. Mohammed Abdul, presently working with the University of London Teaching Hospital.
It depends on the type of person I'm in a relationship with. Because not all hearing people can have affection or feel like having a relationship with the deaf. To me, if I would date a deaf person, it is not a problem. Only God can lead me. In my own humble opinion, and from researches from deaf people who are older than me, especially those who are married, most of them prefer to marry those that are deaf like them. Many deaf people who married hearing people often ended up divorcing. However, that doesn't mean that it won't work with me. As far as I'm concerned, I think deaf to deaf is okay and better. To each man his own. What is good for one may be bad for the other. Perhaps because I have lived in two worlds in my life, both hearing and the deaf world. I have also had past relationships with hearing girls, and now I am having one with a deaf girl. So because of who I am and what I want in life, I will go for someone who is like me. This is not because of sentiment, but because of communication. And communication, as we all know, is very important. It will be nice for me to come home and see that the woman I have can communicate with me in the language I understand. Not that I have to start forcing someone to understand me, or I have to stress myself to write every time. It is not every deaf that uses hearing aid. I used to, but because it disturbs me, so I had to stop. Sometimes it hurts. My deafness is proper, full deafness. I'm not hard of hearing, but hearing aid works for some, but not all. Using hearing aid is frustrating. I don't like it. Hearing aid in Nigeria is common for those who can afford it. I used it some time ago when I just lost my hearing. But maybe because it was not properly measured or worked on before it was given to me. Whenever I wanted to cross the road and a car honks, the noise in my head was always too loud, and when the noise is too high, it will affect my brains. It got to a point when I wanted to cross the road, I would wait for the road to be clear, because if I cross when there are much vehicles, then I will be forced to stop in my tracks on the road, and that's deadly. Hearing aid works well, but when the noise is in excess, it is frustrating. We have people who have been using it since they were kids and they are used to it. But for someone like me, no. Most of the time, I ask myself that I am deaf. People need to know that. Why do I need to hide that? Hearing aid means I am not complete. But I see myself as complete. I can't hear yes, but that is not a serious thing. What society has to do is to put in place structures and laws to protect our rights as a human being. The government does not give proper attention to the deaf in Nigeria. To be in Nigeria alone is enough challenge. In advanced countries, when you get on a bus, you will see a television that will display your bus stop. So when you're approaching your bus stop, you press a button and the bus will stop for you. But we don't have that here, even with BRT. Also, in other countries, they create a sidewalk for people like us. You will see people on wheelchairs. There's a special place for them to walk. But here I have to keep looking back because most motorists break traffic and you don't know when they will hit you. I have been hit many times. Also, Nigerian government does not pay proper attention to us. They prefer to give gifts, give wheelchairs. But that is not what we need. We need our bill to be legalized so that we will know we are a part of this society. To me in life, since God created me deaf, I don't know the reason I became deaf, but God understands and He controls everything about me. The only challenge I can tell you is that it is from people around us. They are not making life easy for us. They don't want to cooperate with us. They just conclude that deaf people cannot do anything in life. It is not easy. First, from family. Some are afraid that deaf people are useless. Secondly, society. Thirdly, government is not helping. And these are the people that are supposed to encourage people like us to go higher. But sadly, they are the ones bringing us down. Because we are deaf, they believe we can't do anything, but we believe in ourselves. Being a deaf is not inability. There is ability in disability. Two things. First, I would like to hear my beloved mommy's voice. Secondly, as a Muslim, I would like to hear the call to prayer. Radio, and I have a good reason. That evening, I became deaf. Usually, every Sunday, there was always this program on radio. The presenter spoke Pidgin English, and people would send him letters. As at that time, the internet wasn't this popular, so if you had to send a letter, you have to send it traditionally. The man had a funny way of reading letters. For example, I got your letter, oh, Mrs. Veronica Ibrugbaja. After telling us the content of the letter, there will be a background music. It wasn't a song per se, just instrumentation. And that still rings in my ear till now. Anytime I remember the show, it is the instrumental that comes to my head. And anytime I sing it, it has a way of keeping me calm. And I would love to hear that sound again.
It's that time that we accept these people, let me put it that way. The truth is that no one is free from disability. You can just walk just a few miles and then you become disabled by accident. You can become disabled, maybe you sleep then you wake up, you just realize that you cannot hear again. Okay, so having a challenge or a special needs like deafness does not mean it is a cause. It is not a cause. It is a way of life. And then these people, we should realize that these people also have feelings. They want to be loved. They have feelings. They want to bring out the best in them. So we should help them. We should understand them. We should become friends with them. And then by this, we will see that they are wonderful people. They are really, really